I'll be highlighting only a few items in the menu just to get you started. When this video is over, spend a couple of minutes looking through the remaining content of the menus in the toolbar to familiarize yourself with what's available. We'll start off with the basics and File, which is pretty self-explanatory, but note this final option, Close and Halt. When you complete work for the day, be sure to save and checkpoint, and then close and halt your notebook. Otherwise, the notebook will continue running on the virtual machine in your workspace. Just closing the window does not stop the notebook. If you look back at the directory, you'll notice that if a notebook is running, the icon in front of it will be green. Now, there are times when you want to keep your notebook running. So, for example, if you're working through an incredibly large set of data and it's going to take a while for the code to kind of go through it, then you want to leave your notebook running for a while. Now, another important option in the menu is Cell. This is especially important if you stop your notebook and then want to restart it at a later date. You will need to rerun any code cells in order to continue working, and that's where you can do this under Cell. And kernel is also really important because sometimes we write code that's a little buggy and we just need it to stop, in which case we would interrupt the kernel or maybe restart it. Now, Insert allows you to put in new cells above or below existing cells. And a lot of these menu options, the most popular ones, are available on the toolbar. You can run cells, you can stop, interrupt the kernel, you can restart the kernel. You can use these arrows to rearrange the order. You can delete cells, but you need to be very careful when deleting or rearranging code cells because you can put them in an order in which your code will no longer work. Now, we're going to change the title of this document, which is up here. It's untitled. And we can change the title by just clicking on the title. And then a new window will pop up. And we can type in our new title. We're going to be calling this one Beginner's Guide to Jupyter Notebooks. Now, the title changed up here, and if we go back to my data, we'll notice that the title changed in our data depot as well. So now this first cell that we see here with the input line with the in little brackets is called a cell. This in particular is called a code cell, meaning you can use it to input and run Python 2 script. But we want our first cell to contain text describing what this notebook is. And to add text, we need to change this cell type to Markdown. And there are two ways to do this. First, you can click on the Cell menu option and then go down to Cell Type and choose between these options. Or on the toolbar, you'll notice that it says Code, indicating this is a code cell. And so we can click on that drag-down menu and choose Markdown, which is the type of cell that we want to turn this into. Now, once the cell has been converted to a Markdown cell, you'll notice that that little in with the bracket is missing, right? That only appears in code cells. Now, let's add a couple of sentences describing the content and purpose of this notebook into this Markdown cell. First, this cell has a blue border, which means you cannot edit it. This is called a command mode, which allows you to copy a cell or move it around, but not edit. So if we click on the inside, this little gray interior, you'll notice that the cell changed from blue to green, and green indicates edit mode. So get your Markdown cell in edit mode and type in a couple sentences describing the purpose of this notebook. So this is my Beginner's Guide to Jupyter Notebooks. It will contain the basic information for working in a notebook and will serve as a reference for me at a later date. Now, we need to run this cell, and pressing enter does not run a cell. It just is like a carriage return, moves to the next line. Now we have several options for running cells. We can always go up to the cell menu and run the cell, or we can just use some keyboard shortcuts, which is what I suggest. If you hold down on the Control key and press Enter, then it will run the cell that it's on. And you'll notice that the formatting looks different. That's because we ran the cell. Now, if we change this cell back into edit mode, we'll need to double click. And if we press Shift, hold down Shift and then press Enter, then what happens is the cell runs. And if the cell was the last cell in the notebook, a new cell will automatically be created, and that's with Shift Enter. Control Enter just runs a cell, Shift Enter runs a cell and adds a new one at the end.